But the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio News number 150, The Danger of Thanking Male Allies on Women's Day. I am your host, Brian Martinez, and I am here with our intrepid panelists to look at the best feels, funnies, and what the fucks to discuss Slam Bam Badger style. Prepare your amygdala, because we are going in dry. Today's Polecat panel consists of, it's always the same people, but I like to do this anyway, Maximilian, yellow isn't just a color, it's a culture, Darrett. Our Polecat punster, and okay, Max, go ahead, comment.
It's a way of life.
Is it short for Maximilian? I often wondered what Max is short for.
Yes, it's short for Maximilian, and also my middle name is Julius. If you wish to insert that at any points, just like Darth Julius Vader, you know.
MJD.
There you go.
That's it, Maximilian Julius Darrett. I was thinking about changing your middle name to something else, like something else Roman. But
Danger.
then I thought, you might just. Oh yeah, Danger. That's a good one. It's my middle name.
Danger's my middle name, baby.
Our Polecat punster and Pussycat Punisher, Hannah, also apparently formidable Twitter warrior, and Dr. Randomcam, Evil Panda.
Formidable Twitter avoider.
Dr. Randomcam, Evil Panda, Puppet Master, and Rabid Long Range Rhetorician. Mike, do you ever get tired of hearing your own voice whenever we start to show up? Because I hate listening to my voice. I hate it. How do you feel about listening to yours? Because you have to listen to it a lot.
I have to edit these shows afterwards, sort of, to put them on the blog talk, and yeah, every syllable I utter is like nails on a chalkboard to my ears. Luckily, I get nice and drunk before the show, so during the show, I don't care enough to actually see if I can ramble.
Now I know why you don't.
Because other people don't hate me as much as I hate myself, and I try to remember that.
I'm in love with the sound of my own voice, so it doesn't bother me.
There you go.
Yeah, see, I don't exactly have that problem unless I'm editing my singing. Then it's, yeah. Because, see, I got a cousin that's an opera singer, so I hear every flaw.
Yeah, I don't listen to my own voice. Somebody said that I should unplug my headset, but I don't know what that means. I actually have it set up to where I do not hear myself because that would drive me up the fucking wall. Also because, and I mean, I'm sure this is true for most people, my voice in my own body sounds completely different from my voice that other people are hearing.
Something I discovered when editing videos, if you have a recording of your own voice and you're listening to it on headphones, not just earbuds, but big headphones, and you move those headphones down, like take them off and leave them resting sort of around your neck and leave that audio track sort of playing, you hear your own voice sort of 3 inches from your ears, but in a very tinny, sort of bizarre, and then you hear your accent. You hear all the weird things about your accent that you had never noticed before, because it wasn't until I did that I thought, wow, where the fuck from England am I even from? Because I've got all these weird inflections from all sorts of different places.
Now, see, where in England am I even from is something that I have never, ever considered. At least not from listening to the sound of my voice.
Certainly not like Mim.
Where in Ohio are you from?
Well, see, that's the other part.
Ohio.
I've listened to my own accent change because I grew up in Ohio, but now I live in Ohio, and it's not the same place, and it doesn't have the same accent.
Dadgummit.
Yeah,
All right.
exactly.
All right, so moving on. And me. So the 4 people that are here. The Supreme Doge back in the sack. We have an excellent show for you guys today. So we're going to go ahead and I'm just giving you the brief on the 3 stories that we've chosen. Esports analyst, is it Soe? Like Zoe? Or
It's Soe, yeah. I wrote in the write-up that it's pronounced so. I was wrong. It's Soe.
It's Soe. Soe Gschwind-Penski, wow, what a name, made the fatal mistake of mentioning men in a good light on Women's Day because that's just something you're not supposed to do. I mean, look what happened to Tucker. Stan Lee, well-known face of Marvel Comics, is surrounded by charlatans and mountebanks out to take his fortune. I know that sounds really weird, but that was, when I saw that was the title, I was like, I want to do a story on this just because I like the sound of a man in the modern age being surrounded by charlatans and mountebanks. It's like old-timey villainy. And finally, a Belgian man was found guilty of expressing contempt to a female officer. That's actually the name of the crime, and he was arrested for it. And now for the bonus story for the patron-only after show. So this is for patrons only. An expose on the Money Badgers. Did you know that Allison and the rest of the gang asked for money to do stuff? We're going to cover this shocking corruption in an after show. So basically there was a blog written on medium.com exposing all the truth about us. Not something that we're not accustomed to, often coming from feminists and stuff. So we're going to go ahead and find out how valid this is.
Yep. Yeah, blame it on the Badger Cave because you're bitch made. Because you're bitch made.
Anyway, if you'd like
Wait
to
a minute.
participate,
You guys get paid. I don't get paid shit. Is it because I'm yellow?
yes, Max, it's because you're yellow.
God
And
damn it! I'm filing a complaint with the SPLC now.
Anyway, if you'd like to participate in our after shows either as an audience member or a participant, please consider becoming a patron at www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. And if you don't want to wake up one morning and find yourself unable to find our content because YouTube, Twitch, and all the other places that probably secretly hate us have finally dropped the axe on our channels, then go to badgerfeed.com. And also, we might get kicked out of Britain. I don't know. It seems like that's the thing these days, so it's possible. And if it does, then the British are going to have to find another place to, on the internet to where they can listen to our content. So consider going to badgerfeed.com. Now, we're just going to jump right into the stories. So, Max, I will hand the floor off to you, my friend.
All right, thank you very much. So Soe Gschwind-Penski, that's like right up there with the coolest names ever. Just all at once. Hold on, I just lost my place. Here we go. Okay, my bad. Soe Gschwind-Penski, a popular eSports analyst and commentator, has been receiving death threats over the following tweet. Give me that tweet, Brian.
You got it. All right, here we go.
Anything you want. Okay, so here's the text. It's hashtag International Women's Day. I'd like to give a special shout out to all the men in our lives who have supported us, gave us a voice when we had none, fought for our cause, and treated us the way we all ought to treat each other, like a fellow human being. No race, no gender. Following this tweet, she reported receiving, quote, death threats and hundreds of hate messages. Give me number 2. Okay. Text. I've gotten death threats and hundreds of hate messages the past 20 minutes because I thanked men for treating me as their equal. On a day which is all about women's struggle for equality, hate, because I'm grateful for the men in our lives who fight alongside us for our rights. I got some of those tweet examples, some of the things that were sent her way, Brian.
Yep.
Okay, lady, you have some internal misogyny to deal with. That was one she actually replied to. Another one, the fact that you can't stomach... Oh, hold on, I got to enlarge my screen. Well, you read that one, Brian.
I can read that one. The fact that you can't stomach lifting up other women for a single day is exactly why we need Women's Day to begin with. So-and-so's law. What's her name's law? Any comment on an article or anything about feminism is justification for more feminisms.
Were you trying to do the PJW voice there? It sounded like you were doing the speeded up.
Oh, yeah, right.
The fact that we can't have one day for praising women without making it about men is why we need International Women's Day in the first place.
That was a pretty good PJW. Okay.
All right, give me a couple more.
You got it.
All right, the fact that we can't have one day for praising women, but making it about men is why we need International Women's Day in the first place. That was my poor attempt at that. Anyway,
okay.
So this is a thing that we have to talk about. First of all, I'll just say what's on the mind of both myself, Brian, and Dr. Random Cam before we actually talk about the actual subject. She is cute.
Yeah,
now that's out of the way.
She is cute. She's like the Tracer cosplay is pretty spot on too. I have to say, she makes for a good lesbian.
Wait, what?
I've never.
Oh yeah, because Tracer's lesbian. My bad.
I've never understood how you can get into that realm. I mean, if I met a baby chinchilla who said to me, in all honesty, #kill all men, I wouldn't find it cute anymore.
No. But Soe is she seems like a pretty decent person from her because I looked at her Twitter and stuff, and I'm sure that she's not like anti-feminist at all. She's definitely at least like a coffee house level feminist on some level. But this
she
totally
thinks
caught her
women didn't
unaware.
have a voice.
Yeah. And that's what she was doing, was thanking male allies. But she's doing it from this a position of moderate feminist, like what she would think to be reasonable. And to thank men, is sort of like this, I guess what she believes is a pretty innocuous thing to say. But maybe Soe doesn't know as much about feminism as she thought. Maybe.
Welcome to the abyss.
It's almost like feminism actually is all about hating men.
The only thought she ever had was thought. There's a million jokes connecting the word thought with the word thought, and we're going to tell them all over the next few years.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
Thought crime.
That's why people come here, Mike.
It's the thought experiment. Okay, so what's next, Max? Shall I go back to the PowerPoint, or do you want to comment on the tweets so far?
Yeah, well, I mean, there was a ton of other examples, but just for the sake of time and not stressing Brian.
We got time. We can go through the rest. I got everything else, bro.
Oh, you got everything else?
Yeah, well, I got as far as The Guardian. I don't have, so I got into The Guardian article is the next thing I have, which is their take on it, but yeah.
So it's interesting that it's not that interesting because it's the fucking Guardian. But yeah, at the very end of the article that The Guardian wrote up on this subject, here are a couple of the quotes, because despite the fact that she was receiving death threats, The Guardian took it upon themselves to sort of bolster up the agenda of the people that were giving her death threats. Here's a quote. Do you actually have the quote?
Yep.
Okay, there we go. The professional scene around Overwatch, a team-based multiplayer first-person shooter from World of Warcraft developer Blizzard, featuring a diverse cast of heroes spanning genders and ethnicities, has at times struggled to reflect the game's inclusive values. Give me a fucking break.
What?
Like, it's an
what?
Like, isn't Overwatch like the one FPS that has more female players than any other FPS in history? I could have sworn I read that somewhere.
I think it does. I think that's right. I mean, there are people who I know, like Margaret McLennan, who I don't know if you know who Margaret McLennan is. I think her name is.
Oh, yes. I know Margaret.
You know Margaret. Yeah. So she never played FPSs, and she played this one. So yeah, no, I think it actually is tremendously popular with women, and I to Blizzard's credit, because they basically approached the development in such a way as to appeal to many people who don't even like competitive FPSs at all. FPSs, sorry. Even myself, like, I don't normally get into those, but I really, really got into this one. So I think to their credit, because that's actually a really smart approach, and. Yeah, I mean, there's like no shame in their game when it comes to Blizzard's feeling on the importance of diversity. They have talked about it at length. They have definitely pushed it, although they didn't do it in a terribly annoying way. But again, I don't particularly find it egregious because the game is so good that it's not getting in the way of that. But this idea that the professional scene struggles to reflect the game's inclusive values, that is something that I'd like to get into, but maybe I'll let you finish the quote here before I do that.
All right, yeah. So there's a little bit left here. The 2-year-old's Owl Overwatch League did make headlines last month when South Korean teenager Kim Se-yeon signed with the Shanghai Dragons, that's a why the Shanghai Dragons here from Korea? Anyways, to become the league's first female player. But high-profile eSports competitions remain a male-dominated space. Gschwind-Penski is the only female member of Owl's full-time commentary team. Okay.
Yeah. So, to clarify, the Shanghai Dragons, they had these teams based around certain parts of the world, but the people in them didn't necessarily have to be from that place. I guess it was just because there was a limited number of slots, and the Korean team probably filled up the fastest, and I think they were the best team. Shocker, South Koreans are the best at video games made by Blizzard. But to go back to that, it's interesting that they make such a big such a big deal out of the fact that that was the first league, the first female player in the Overwatch League, because essentially the only reason why she made it was because she was good enough to do the job. They wanted the best players, right? And the fact is that when it comes to highly competitive games, that especially FPSs, those are going to likely be dominated by men. But what's really interesting is that they talk about how, it's they have a hard time, or they struggle to reflect the game's inclusive values. But the interesting thing about it is the best players are not white, which I think the Guardian would say they're not the white players, they're the Asian players. Just like most things, like that's the thing that's funny about it. It's almost like video games require you to be good at them in order to be played at the highest levels of competition, because in terms of the general demographics of players, it's people from everywhere that like this game. People from all over the world that have access to an internet connection, that can't afford it, all kinds that play it. But that's fine, like that there's whatever, people who are interested are playing. But at the highest levels of skill, to the point where there's competition and it's very, very stiff, yeah, it's going to be mostly men. It's like the fighting game community is like the same way. Lots of people like to play fighting games, but when you go to the Evo and like the big tournaments and stuff, sorry, but it's going to be a lot of Asians mostly, and there's going to be also a mixture of white guys and some black guys, but there's going to be a lot of men. I actually think that when it comes to the fighting tournaments, it's probably like 99, if not 100% men, and that's because they're the ones that are interested in that. I'm sorry there's no Candy Crush Olympics. I mean, I don't know what to tell you.
There probably is somewhere.
No, there probably is someplace, yeah, but
they get around the whole issue of hating on Asians because they're probably virgins, they're probably autistic, and they play video games, which is that promotes misogyny. Because I mean, like, look at Overwatch, look at Tracer, look at her overexposed ass. Remember with Brianna Wu and her comments on that.
Mm-hmm.
That's, yeah, of course.
I wonder if autism encourages misogyny.
Well, it's interesting. I got a comment on one of my videos on my personal channel the other day. I was talking about Asperger's and my experience with it, and a guy just commented saying, "Oh, look at that! Another conservative autistic guy who hates women." Apparently, and then I was like, "Really? Is that a stereotype?"
Autism creates conservatism?
I have no idea. But then I looked it up, and apparently that's
the next thing it'll be autism. It'll be vaccines create autism or something.
Oh God! If it gets to that point, I don't know if I'm gonna want to live on this planet anymore. Oh, it has.
It's just a meme, bro. Don't worry. It's just a meme.
Oh, it's just okay. Thank God. Whew. All right, but yeah, apparently that's a stereotype. Autistic kids being conservative and hating women. Well, newsflash, I don't hate women. I actually love women. So much so that some of the viewers of Honey Badger Radio give me shit for it from time to time. But that's okay.
You're the youngest. It's fine.
Yes, I am the youngest. Keep that in mind, everybody.
It does lend itself to being a bit naive about women.
Well,
it's not saying that all women are actually demons in disguise or anything. And I only say that to my son. But no, seriously though, this is it's not surprising that people would conflate autism with misogyny, because people who are all wrapped up in a need for other people to intuitively guess their emotional state and then cater to it would consider themselves hated by people who don't necessarily even unintuitively guess their emotional state and who
Exactly.
aren't naturally inclined to cater to it. And so that there's your clash between autistic people and women, even when the autistic people are women. It's autistic women really confuse the fuck out of other women because when you don't have that must be ruled by the emotions not of only yourself but all the women around you also, it really messes up, I guess, the female social matrix, and
Di-
they
di-
don't know how to deal with that at all. They really don't. It's their own form of female autism, I guess you could say.
well, diagnosing people with autism is, um, it's sort of a symptom of something else. Oh, I forgot what my point was. But if the female version of autism is kind of the opposite of autism, like
Yeah,
if you
it's borderline
like,
personality disorder.
yeah, it's like the not getting a joke thing. Like people, if you don't get a joke, then that must mean you're autistic. Well, no, there are other conditions that make you susceptible to not getting jokes. If you've got borderline, then you're more likely to prescribe people's intentions to them. I think this is what I was talking. The diagnosing people with hate, right? That's quite a common phenomenon these days, going around diagnosing people with hate.
No.
Is that something autists would do? Autists can't diagnose emotions, can they? It's kind of, that's what it is. It's why it's not the same as being retarded. It's a specific condition. Autists can't tell if you have hate or who you hate or what you have hate for. So anyone who goes around accusing people, diagnosing people with hatred, is more likely to be the opposite of autism. Do you get me?
Yeah, I want to. That's a very interesting point that you're making. It's like diagnosing with people with hate is how you kick them out of your country, Britain. But I want
yeah, a bunch of fucking beepers. Yeah.
But I want to go back to to bring it back to the article. You just brought up something that got me thinking about one of the reasons why perhaps the top players of games are men. And I wonder if it's because men tend to have that ability to hyper focus on getting good at something to the point where they might, like, even to their own detriment, where the only thing they're doing is they're working on getting better at this skill, whether it is, because even when you look at people who are very good at certain things that aren't video game related, like the people who are the top surfers or the top skaters or the top athletes or the top chess players or the top, whatever, they tend to be men. And I think it's because maybe there's, and I don't think that this is something that all men are capable of. I think it's basically because these men, they have their brains wired in such a way that they are able to maximize their potential in a given interest or discipline. So maybe there's something about the male brain that does that. And I'm just entertaining the idea right now. Guys in the chat, tell me what you think, but you see what I'm saying? Like, even like yesterday or last night, I was playing this game called Overcooked with my wife. And it's basically where you're all chefs. And I jokingly said to her, because it gets pretty crazy when you play it for a bit. I jokingly said to her, because she was failing at something, I said, you see, this is the reason why the top chefs in the world are all men. And I didn't really think about it, but even that, like being good at something to the point where you're able to break it down to a degree that a lot of other people, cannot even conceive of. I think that's something that seems to be more prominent or more common with men. I'm not going to say it's unique to them, but I do think it's more common with them. Maybe it's something about male brains. And there could be something related to, this hyper focus or maybe even what you were talking about, like Asperger's or autism. Like we know that a lot of men in STEM, they're probably like on the spectrum somewhere, or at least people would say that about them. Maybe we're just throwing that out there because we don't like the way they're behaving. But you see what I'm saying? Like I don't want to monopolize the conversation here, but do you see what I'm getting at?
Actually, I haven't seen anything on it recently, but in the past, it has been sort of postulated that high functioning autism, and there's high functioning autism and there's low functioning autism. They might
Sure.
both be this, but is an extreme form of male intelligence, and it's why men who are autistic get viewed as like dangerous in some ways or another, because nobody is more dangerous than an intelligent person. Even a big, strong person is not more dangerous than an intelligent person. A highly intelligent person is highly dangerous.
There's nothing
But
more
then-
dangerous than an intelligent sheep. And if you want human to be sheep,
Oh my God. No, then you have like even stupid people are not as genuinely dangerous. Like, even if Jar Jar Binks is a an exception, but even stupid people are not more dangerous than intelligent people, because intelligent people can decide how they're going to hurt you, and stupid people do it by accident. But women who are autistic don't get along with women who are not autistic because we don't act like women. All right.
Mhm.
And since I get called autistic enough, I'm just going to start saying we. I've never been diagnosed, but everything points to Asperger's. And like when I went for evaluation as a kid, Asperger's wasn't in the DSMR because I'm old. So, and then by the time I learned about it, it was no longer in the DSMR. So I just don't care.
DSM.
but-
Oh yeah, right. I thought it was DSM 5.
The Diagnostic Statistical Manual revised. And I think we're up to like 10 or 12 or something like that by now. I mean, it was like 4 the last time I actually read it. I probably shouldn't be telling everybody I read it, but anyway, I read the encyclopedia, for crying out loud, so why not? And not a recent one, but in any case,
not
no,
the Dramatica one.
No, well, I've read several articles from that because they're fucking entertaining as hell. But yeah, okay, so somebody said it's still at 5. Okay.
Okay,
And
yeah.
it flashed by so fast I couldn't see who.
I
But
thought
no,
DSM 5 was the latest one.
Okay, good. So it hasn't been.
that's,
They
Andre
were just like going
Martins.
through and. They were going through and revising the hell out of it here and there, and it was being revised more than Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, but in any case, no, it is attributed in some ways as an extreme form of intelligence. And like having worked with intellectual disabilities, I can see that, and I really can't say a lot because obviously I'm not going to violate HIPAA for the show, but there's a degree to which people who are autistic approach things in a way that is generally more masculine, or at least something that I would normally associate more with men than with women. And there are ways in which women clash with that if they are not autistic. And I would say, like, where feminists label certain behaviors toxic masculinity, there are certain behaviors I would label, and I think the other girls have labeled toxic femininity, that the extreme form of femininity, the toxic form of femininity. And I wouldn't consider autism necessarily toxic, but the toxic form of femininity, the disabling form of femininity, is borderline disorders. It is the various types of borderline disorders and narcissism. And I'm not entirely sure that's not, like, I know some of it is nurture, and is the way our society raises women versus the way our society raises men.
Sure.
Where women are supposed to have a greater degree of self-interest and a greater expectation of being coddled. But at the same time, I think part of it's biological. And I think we've gotten to the point where valuing that greater degree of self-interest and that greater degree of wanting to or expecting to be coddled
Yeah.
has created a situation where we have evolved as a society to breed women to be cunts. And so then when we run across somebody who is different, who is not necessarily interested in being coddled and who is not necessarily interested in being popular, none of the other women know how to deal with it. And when it's a guy and they can't use I have tits and ass coddle me to get what they want from him, that just, like, talk about getting their panties in a bunch.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, no, I would say I would say you're on the money. I would say both of you have been on the money with respect to what autism is and what it means to other people and how it impacts this environment, basically. But I'm going to change one bit of the subject. Did this chick show one death threat in all of the tweets that popped up that we found? Was there a single actual "I am going to do X to you that will cause your death"?
I didn't see any. They were probably deleted, because I did see a bunch of people on the thread under her tweet saying that some of the messages got deleted. So I'm assuming maybe those were the ones. But there were tons of people that were saying, "Hey, why did you have to make today the one day that you thank men?"
There were a lot of people that were criticizing her and jumping down her throat and maybe even insulting her. There were some deleted tweets. I didn't see any death threats. So yeah, I think taking it with a grain of salt is, or at least understanding that Soe's definition of threat may not actually be a threat, but
it could be threatoid, because
it could be a threatoid.
It would fit right in with what other feminists have done. Oh, go kill yourself. Oh, that's a death threat. No, that's not a death threat. So I can tell you what a death threat is, because I've actually had somebody stand in front of me and say, "I'm going to come to your house in the middle of the night and kill your whole family." Well, actually, what he did was, "I'm going to come to your house in the middle of the night and kill your whole family," which was not nearly as intimidating. So, my answer was, "Okay, Tommy."
Were you threatened by razor blade candy, or was it Bane
No,
666
I was threatened by
3 years ago?
Was threatened by a little redneck drug dealer who dressed like a Sam Kinison wannabe.
Oh, did he have one of those
throat cancer? And he had a stoma and whatever that thing is that you use to push on your throat and talk. But yeah, and so when he did that, I really made fun of him.
That is hilarious. Yeah, I would have been like, "Well, you're gonna have to catch me first."
Yeah. It's the same meme that you learn when you're a kid. I mean, how young were you when you first learned how to say, "I'm gonna kill you in a minute"? And realize that you don't mean it. Like, everyone realizes from a very early age.
Yeah,
you can say, "I'm gonna kill you in a minute."
Parents always threatening her dog.
I'm gonna kill you in a minute.
Jeez, we never were like that nice in my neighborhood. We were gonna rip each other's faces off. I'm gonna, I'm gonna kick your balls so hard they're gonna come out through your nose. That kind of thing. We didn't just make ordinary. You had to actually exaggerate everything.
Mm-hmm.
I kill you till you're dead.
So let me read some super chats, because we are starting to get them. So I got one from the French Honey Badger for $2, and he says, "Not all Max," I guess he means the name Max, "is short for anything, for your information." So there you go. That might have been, he might have been correcting me. Sometimes Max is just Max.
Just one of these days I'm going to meet a Max who's actually short for Maximus, and that person will be the most epic person I have.
That would have been my son.
My name's actually Maximus.
That's
dude. I'm totally. If I ever have a son, I'm totally gonna name him Maximus Decimus Meridius.
Yes.
Just because there's no cooler name than that. I mean, like Soe.
Are you also going to make sure that his wife and son are killed so that he can recite the line?
Yeah, you're gonna have his actual surname. His actual surname is going to be husband to a murdered wife, father to a murdered
He's gonna have an epic life.
Ginger Socrates gave us $5 and says, "Hannah hit the nail on the head with autism. I'm autistic. And that is exactly the problem. It's pretty much victim blaming the autistic person. And yep.
Well, I think. Look, I think it's true to say. Well, it's possible to very probable that autism is being overdiagnosed these days. Because much like Hannah, in when I was a child, they didn't have Asperger's wasn't a thing. They just had children who like to concentrate. And particularly when I got later in life, I started to wonder, maybe I am autistic. Sometimes when I hear the descriptions that autistic people say about how they experience the world, and it doesn't sound particularly abnormal to me, and I think, whoa, maybe I am. But then I went out into the real world. I showed my face in the real world because I've met lots of people in the meetups that we do, like the Badgers and at Sargon's thing, particularly at Sargon's thing.
Yeah.
This week in Stupid Life, you meet a lot of real life people in the flesh, and quite a lot of them are autistic, genuinely autistic. Like they come right out and say it, and it turns out they're very good at talking.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a lot of them can't talk. Obviously, they're extreme autism; they actually can't talk. But a lot of just mildly autistic people have this uncanny ability to just keep talking at you, and because they can't tell when you're bored or not.
Yeah, sure.
Well,
sure. Or
So they
disinterested.
That's
they
one of my
just
problems.
keep nattering at you, and that I'm pretty sure I'm not autistic because I have a crippling fear of boring people with the very first word that I say. But again, it's something that's you can think of yourself as maybe I'm not quite borderline, therefore I'm autistic.
That's funny though, because you're like one of the least boring people I've ever met, and I suppose I'm not a great judge of it, except because I don't get bored the way people describe what boredom is. But you're definitely more interesting in terms of you're very creative, and I run into a lot of people that are not creative at all, and I find creativity fascinating.
Maybe my crippling fear of being boredom is what makes me creative.
Possibly. I don't know. Like autism in and of itself, people think of Rain Man when they hear autism, and it's a stereotype. They sort of combined a lot of the symptoms of autism into one character, and not everybody has all of the symptoms. And I mean, I've seen it be so bad that the person literally doesn't show any outward sign of being aware of their surroundings other than to move, in response to being guided. And then I've also seen it be so subtle that you wouldn't know until you get the person on their topic. And then when you get the person on their topic, it's like, oh God, there it is. That's it. And some people have more than one topic, but it becomes obvious at that point. And I don't know. It can be disabling. It can be 100% disabling. It can actually put a person into a state of needing care for the rest of their lives, where they have to have a caregiver take care of them. It can be accompanied by mental retardation, believe it or not. And it can also be accompanied by genius level intelligence. This idea that you treat it like it is the same as calling somebody autistic is the same as calling somebody you retard, which is probably a pretty stupid insult. It's very uncreative insult, actually.
It's very different. Retard literally means slow. I mean, it's been taken on board the euphemism treadmill, so to speak. But you can get away with retarded because it literally means slow. It's like calling someone Oriental literally means calling them Eastern. There's nothing discriminatory about it. Calling someone retarded, despite the connotations, means you're calling them literally slow. The same does not go for autism. It's calling someone a schizophrenic.
Like I've watched it in my lifetime, at least in my area. I've watched you retard go from being an insult to someone's intelligence to being the statement, I disagree with your choice in this instance. I mean, it's that subtle now. It's anything. People will call somebody you retard for liking a different flavor of ice cream. Then what do you mean you like chocolate better than vanilla, you retard. It's lost all meaning. And the reason that I use the label intellectual disabilities when I talk about my job is because the community that provides care for people who have intellectual disabilities uses that term instead of, it used to be mental retardation, developmental disabilities. And you couldn't lump them all in together because there's a whole slew of different disabilities that fall under these categories. But people used to lump them all under retarded, and then there would be various terms they would use under that. And the truth is that's not correct. It's not factual. But the reason that the change was made in the community is partly because the term retard or retarded was used as an insult so much that you don't want to use it in front of the people that you're providing care for, because they've heard it as an insult and then they think it makes them less of a person. So it was basically, you separate the term from the people. And what has happened is, we've used something that basically it's catchy to call somebody a retard. It may not be very creative, but it's catchy, right? But in the middle of, you're an intellectual disabilities patient, isn't going to catch on with anybody. So it's more likely that'll never change.
See, I don't really mind what the word is, as long as the mechanism that accompanies the word isn't a self-fulfilling one. Because if I were to say you're a retard, and then you said no, I'm not, and then I said, well, that just proves you're a retard, that would pretty much confirm that I'm using retard not just as a general insult, but as a thought-terminating cliche. And how often have you heard that play out? You're autistic. Well, no, I'm not. I'm actually, the fact that you don't get what I'm saying means you're autistic. So, point proven, native of the exactly the same goes to toxic masculinity and privilege, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If you don't recognize your privilege, it's because you have it. It's just a holy fucking sacred thought-terminating cliche.
Yeah, but if you ever want to see a feminist spurg out, wait until they say that. Then tweet them a link to Karen's owning your shit post on the female privilege checklist. And when they say that's not privilege because women are oppressed, and don't tweet at them. You just quote their tweet back at them. Wait until they say, you don't recognize your privilege, then do that. You don't recognize your privilege, that proves you have privilege. No, those aren't privilege. Oh, you just said. Guess what?
And by the way, you can carry on calling things whatever you like, but the things feminists do, I'm going to call beeping out instead of spurging out. Not telling anyone else what to do, not policing anyone else's language, but I think it's more appropriate to refer to it as beeping out. And I think you know what beep stands for.
Okay, so I got another super chat, and then I think I'm going to say one more thing to this, and then we'll move on to the next story after I let Max say a few words. So, Joey Jojo gave us $2 a little while ago. He says, this explains why women hate MGTOW and incel. Not sure what that's related to, but it could be related to the topic we're talking about. And then Anthony Durrell gives us $10 Australian and says, it's not just that autists can't tell you're bored, Mike. Autists have a hard time starting conversations, but a harder time stopping them. Sorry for Gold Coast rambling, Mike. Thanks for Straya explaining to us, Anthony.
He just explained why Badger Talk frequently ends up going 2 hours.
Yeah.
I didn't notice any rambling on your behalf. In fact, I wanted you to speak more than you did, because your reputation preceded you. You're one of the quiet autists. I mean, there's, dare I say, a spectrum from the autists who literally can't speak, all the way to the autists who ramble. And I can understand having a hard time starting a conversation, because I have a very hard time starting a conversation, but I don't have a hard time stopping them. I just can't fucking talk because I'm a fucking passive aggressive person.
one quick thing, just when it comes to autism and conversations, you'll find that a lot of, I'm speaking for myself as well, you'll find that a lot of people who have autism do have a hard time starting conversations and talking on certain topics. But the moment you bring up something that's within their wheelhouse, then they could just talk their asses off. I'm exactly the same case. You know, somebody asked me about how my day was at school. I'll be like, oh, it was fine. But then the moment somebody brings up the words Metal Gear Solid, then I'm just, as Hannah would say, spurging out. Well, do you want to talk about the main series, or do you want to talk about the Acid series, or do you want to talk about Rising, or do you want to talk about Ghost Babel or Snake's Revenge? Because that's exactly what I am. And it's because, you know, the whole element of social conversation is so difficult that if there's a chance where we can actually speak about something intelligently and come across as you know, somewhat interesting, whereas most of the other time we wouldn't be, we jump at the chance, but most of the time it just falls back on us, you know, and it's unfortunate.
Nanomachines, son. Okay, so
the answer to everything in MGS4, nanomachines.
Nanomachines, son. All right, so yeah, like to just sort of wrap up on this particular story, Soe, welcome to the club. I'm sure you weren't expecting that, but thanks for giving us men a mention anyway, because to be honest, if it wasn't for men, there would be no Overwatch, there would be no Blizzard, there would be no video games. So thanks, Soe, for recognizing the purchasing power of men, and that they basically gave you your job and everyone that works there. The only people they're not actually paying for are the bitches that gave you shit online. So whether or not the threats are real is a whole other story. So before we get into the next story, Max, tell us, give the audience a few words, because we need like buttons smashed. Max, are you talking? Because I can't hear you.
Damn it, my microphone.
I thought you were being dramatic. I was like, is there a dramatic pause? Should I not be talking?
I thought maybe daylight saving times would ease in you. That's the thing that happens.
Yes. No, I take my acting cues from Marlon Brando, where he just doesn't talk for like 5 seconds and then he starts talking. But look, ladies and gentlemen, from what I see right now, there are about 300 people watching collectively, 250 people on Honey Badger Radio, and about 60 people on the Badger live streams. Look, I say this all the time, but I'm just going to say it to remind you, because every single time I remind you, it actually helps us out a lot. Please hit that like button. When you do that, it tells the YouTube algorithm that our content is worth watching, and it sends it out to as many people as it can, and it pops up in their recommended feeds, gets more people to check us out, gets them more inclined to watch more of our videos, subscribe, grows our listener base. So yeah, it's going, if I can just get it past 100 on the Honey Badger Radio stream, I'll be perfectly happy. We're at 86, just 14 more, and then I'll be grateful. But if you can go past that, I'll give you a bath. Okay.
Don't hit the like button. Don't smash the like button. The authorities are telling you not to hit the like button. Trust me, that'll help.
Hitting the like button is so cringe, guys. It's so cringe.
Hitting the like button is so autistic.
So, you know what? I know this is off topic. Before I get into the next story, I just had this thought. Because we're spread across multiple platforms, we're on 2 YouTube channels at once. Would it be better if we were only on one YouTube channel, so that the collection of likes were on one video on one channel? Because right now, if we get, if everyone hit the like button, the main channel would only get a certain number, like, you know, a couple hundred. The streaming channel would get a certain number, but they'd be spread out. I'm just thinking that, I don't know. I just a thought I'm having. I'm thinking out loud.
No, this is one of the things I like about Honey Badger. I think there's a great deal of people, because we mostly do streams. There's a lot of people who only listen to the blog talk or the libsyn when it was the thing. They just download the MP3 and listen to it at their leisure because it's 2 hours long. So you can't really tell how big we are. Mm-hmm. That's what I like about us. We've been going pretty strong for 4 years. It suggests we're pretty sturdy, much sturdier than the numbers would suggest.
There's a reason why we call ourselves the stealthy polecats.
We are the fart that never dispersed.
Any leopard will tell you the honey badger is the devil to kill.
Moving
We have to be
on.
careful calling ourselves the devil, because then we're going to end up with the wrong kind of women. The ones that want the devil on a leash. So let's let's avoid that. I don't like leashes.
Some people do. For some, it's
Yeah,
their
well.
fetish. All right.
There you go.
Moving on.
Okay.
Moving on to the next.
Well, I
story.
did go to a Halloween party once as a freak on a leash, but
Yeah.
that was a costume.
All right. So after losing his wife Joan B. at the age of 95, Marvel Comics legend Stan Lee is being bled dry by con men and charlatans, according to various insiders. So you guys know who Stan Lee is. I don't think I need to explain this. And you also know that his wife died recently, and he had been married to her for a very, very long time. Now, before I move on with the rest of the information in this article, is a fun fact that I didn't realize. If a couple, this is like a trend that tends to happen. Did you know that whenever there is a married couple that's been together for multiple decades, if one of them dies of old age, the other one usually dies within, I think it's like less than 5 years afterwards, is a tendency. It's actually something that tends to happen. So once Joan died, it's a way of letting you know that Stan is not far behind. So the Daily Beast noted that sexual allegations against Lee cover a few illustrative scandals that an insider says is leading to financial ruin. So here's one of the quotes. A half dozen anonymous former nurses have accused Lee of sexual impropriety. Lee denies the allegations. This stuff, we talked about this on a show earlier. It was a while back when the whole Me Too thing was brand new, and there are all these people coming out of the woodwork claiming that there was, sexual assaults going on and whatnot. It was around the same time that I believe George Bush Sr. was accused of doing some stuff from like a wheelchair with somebody. Well, apparently there were some nurses that came forward making sexual allegations against Stan Lee. And that supposedly this is leading him to financial ruin. Now, this guy created Marvel Comics. This is an enormous comic book company. And he hasn't worked there in a long time. He's long since retired, but he is the face of that company. So he's making cameo appearances and everything else. And now with the films and all their success, we're talking like multi-billion-dollar industry. And there are all these people that are making accusations, and they're basically showing up out of the woodwork to try to get a piece of the pie. Important disclaimer. A lot of this stuff is all coming from inside sources, and I cannot give you 100% confirmation on any of this stuff. It gets a bit gossipy, so just please take this with a grain of salt, but consider the possibility that this could be true. Okay, so an unauthorized check for $300,000 was written from Lee's business account for a charity that Lee formed with former business partner Jerry Olivares. Family friend of the Lees, Kaya Morgan, claims the check was a forgery. Joan Cecilia Lee, Stan Lee's daughter, believes the check was legitimate, but was signed under false pretenses. The rabbit hole goes deeper, as the unregistered charity Olivares began with Lee, which is called Hands of Respect, was the recipient of the $300,000 check. Hands of Respect produces and sells lapel pins and claims that their goal was to, quote, promote a culture of respect amongst all communities across the nation. However, the profit has been determined to have gone directly to the owners. Jonathan Bourne, a TV writer and producer mostly of game shows, came across the charity and was met with only evasion when he asked where the money went and how it helped to end racism. He said, red flags started to go up everywhere. You can't even name one charity that you're giving your money to, but at every one of the Comic-Cons, there they are, Stan Lee or someone using Stan Lee's name to take money mostly from kids and then not do anything with it. This seems like someone thought, well, Avengers fans will buy anything. I don't know if it's a scam or not, but it doesn't look good. Olivares is... Oh, did someone want to say something? I heard a noise. If you guys want to say something, just start talking. It's fine.
I'm sitting here listening.
Okay.
I guess I'm unmuted.
Well, you are now. You are
No,
now.
I think I think I'm hitting the button twice every time I hit it.
Oh, okay. Red flags started to go up everywhere. I already read that bit. Olivares' attorney, Uri Litvak, on Hands of Respect. Hands of Respect is a for-profit company. It's like any other company, so there's nothing special about it. The profits get distributed to the owners. And in regards to the missing 300 grand, Litvak responds, the first thing to understand is that there are no funds missing because it's very clear that the funds went from Stan, or one of his companies, to Hands of Respect. It was just Stan taking funds from one of his companies and moving it to one of his other companies. Olivares is the same person who, after Lee's wife died, temporarily gained power of attorney over Lee's financial affairs. And $850,000 of Stan Lee's money was also used to buy a Beverly Hills condo for Olivares. A spokesperson for Joan Celia Less states, the Lee family will fully audit and scrutinize Hands of Respect going forward. And on the subject of Olivares, it was a friendship of convenience. Jerry had plans to monetize Stan. After all of this, they will have cut off all connection to him.
Okay, now I do have something to say.
Okay.
This is a serious issue, and it's coming out to this community with Stan Lee, but it has hit celebrities before, and it has come out. This happened to Mickey Rooney. It's called elder abuse. And what happens is when somebody gets past the age where it's no longer assumed by the general public that they are not senile, or that they are not misremembering things, and that they are not basically they get past the age where they're no longer invulnerable to being treated like they're nuts for disagreeing with somebody's assessment that they made a particular choice. That's when they become vulnerable to being ripped off in great amounts and mistreated and taken advantage of and lied about and so on. First of all, the story about the home health care accusations. It is not abnormal once a person gets to the age where they are senile, where they lose their filter. But to tell the public the way these aides did, and to treat it as an act of abuse, to treat it like the individual is doing something that they are capable of not doing, is reprehensible. And to tell the public would be a violation of HIPAA laws. And it destroys the credibility of anybody making that accusation. There's never been any public evidence of any kind that Stan Lee has reached that point. There's never been any public evidence of any kind. Nobody's come back from conventions or expos or anything like that and said, man, I had a conversation with Stan Lee and he's just completely senile now. Never happened. So for somebody to come out and say, well, yeah, he's lost his filter and he does things that an ordinary adult would know are wrong, and he doesn't know they're wrong anymore. To say that is slander. And if it's true that he doesn't know they're wrong anymore, then he's not an abuser. He is now a vulnerable individual. This is something that the thing that makes this a men's issue. If he were female, and women do this, and it's more likely that women will do it because it's more likely for women to live past the point where their brains are all there. Senile old women will grab. Senile old women will invite you into their bed. Senile old women will strip and not care who's in the room. Senile old women will masturbate in front of other people.
Good Lord.
It's one of the areas, and this is not all senile old women, but it happens.
No, but it happens. You know, right.
It's one of the vulnerabilities that you deal with as a caregiver for the elderly. I've been a caregiver for the elderly. Yeah. And it would be a reprehensible act for a caregiver to abusively treat the individual like, instead of being a vulnerable individual who now has a mental disability that prevents them from moderating their behavior and makes them vulnerable to humiliation because of it, to treat that person like an abuser It'd be the same thing as treating a person in a wheelchair like they're an abuser because they didn't stand up when you came into the room, and you think that's a sign of disrespect.
Yeah.
Like really, at that point, you cannot argue both things. You could argue that somebody is all there, 100% all there, and acting like that on purpose, and that's abuse. Or you can, to yourself or among the care staff, make sure everybody knows, hey, you have to watch out for this behavior that has manifested as the person has begun to deteriorate because now they can't help doing this. And that's a vulnerability. If somebody loses their filters, that is not an abuse. That is a vulnerability. Just because he's male wouldn't make it an abuse. It would still be, if that were true, a vulnerability. And it would mean that he deserves a caliber of caregiver who recognizes that that is a vulnerability and who is able to deal with, this person is going to do these things, and it's my job to make sure that they do not lead to him being taken advantage of or harmed in any way or publicly embarrassed in any way. And for somebody to be in that job, and I mean, it would be an unbelievable privilege to be a caregiver for someone like Stanley, who has made so many people happy, who's brought so much joy to so many people through his storytelling, and has been such an influence. I honestly, that it just is galling to hear somebody turn around and shit on that by treating a situation where they have the privilege of spending time with this person and giving a little back,
Yeah.
as a chance at money grubbing.
Yeah, and the sexual allegations came right after his wife died, which I'm sure was extremely stressful for him to deal with.
And that's like an even more that's the most vulnerable time. Your partner dies, your lifetime partner dies, especially at that age.
This is one of those great sort of misunderstandings and indeed double standards that women are expected, that marriage is this trap that women are expected to fall into. Whereas here we see with male celebrities, the only way they can avoid being stigmatized as a sexual pervert is to be tied to one woman. Like if you're a celebrity man, like who's popular enough to have pussy flinged at him from every direction, as I think I said once upon a time, you're not allowed to satisfy any more or any less than one of them. If you have any less than one sexual partner as a straight white male, then you're some kind of pervert. You're some kind of deviant. And if you have more than one female sexual partner as a straight white male, then you're some kind of sexual deviant. So if your wife dies, then guess which pool you've just fallen into? It's you season now.
All right, got a super chat here from Scrimer U. He gives us 50 secs and writes, "Why do you insist on having the streams in the middle of the night? I have to go to bed now." Good night, Scrimer. I'm sorry. You can always go back and listen to us later. It just won't be live, but that's all right. And that's the only one. That's the only one. So that again, the stuff is a bit. Some of the stuff in this story is a bit, it's a lot of he said, she said stuff, but I'm the stuff about people waiting for essentially positioning their pieces in such a fashion as to when Stanley passes away, and everyone knows it's going to happen very, very soon. Very soon now. They're in positions to essentially take advantage of his whatever he has in terms of his fortune, which, by the way, was only possible because of the stuff that he was able to do for people. But when his properties became bankable Hollywood blockbusters, then that is actually the reason why I think it has so many people's attention. You know, because I think that before the films came, Stan Lee was probably considered a celebrity insofar as for people who were involved with the comics industry, like enough comics fans that knew the name. But the making it a Hollywood thing, I think definitely makes him a lot more bankable, and a lot more people take notice, and that means a lot more, well, parasites. So, you know, this is, as Hannah said, it's, if true, this is appalling, and I just hope that, you know, I know that he is probably suffering for reasons that we can't conceive of after losing his partner. I had to put my dog down last year, and that was really hard, and I only lived with her for 10 years, and she was a dog. I can only imagine, like, living with another human being for, I don't know, it had to be at least 50 years, if not more, because he knew her from World War II. And they got married right after he came back. Or something like that. So we're talking...
From what I've seen, it's more often that if a woman dies, her husband doesn't outlive her for very long.
No, usually the husband dies first. But
yeah, I've seen women outlive their husbands by 20 years and mourn them the whole time, but because they haven't had maybe the degree of physical stress throughout their lives, like they have all their physical stress in their childbirth, and then the rest of their lives it's not necessarily smooth sailing, but it's a lot smoother sailing than the labor the guy has done, the husband has done, and they will sometimes they'll outlive their husbands for 20 years. But and my grandfather outlived my grandmother for a lot longer than we all expected. We didn't think he was going to make it through the first year because he was just crushed. I mean, he was lost for a year, but he lived with our family.
I'm sorry. I just want to throw this in there because I just learned it and I don't want it to pass. Captain Cummings, who makes comic book videos on YouTube, said that Stan Lee had pneumonia last week and did a short video that looked like a goodbye to the fans. It was very depressing. So he was very sick just a week ago, and we don't know if he still is, because when you get that old, the body just...
Well, pneumonia specifically is a very common killer. That's one of the reasons why when you are old, they vaccinate against pneumonia, and they can only do it once. If I remember right, pneumonia and what's the other one? Shingles. They can only vaccinate once for. But the reason they do it is because the elderly are more susceptible to death by pneumonia rather than fighting it off. And it's not just because their immune system doesn't fight it. It's because they don't have the physical strength and stamina to deal with the fatigue and oxygen loss that is caused by having fluid or mucus in your lungs, which is what pneumonia is. Pneumonia.
I had it. I had it a few years ago, like really bad. Like I was in the hospital with CT scans and everything. Yeah, not good.
No. So, one of the reasons they thought I wasn't going to make it to 21 was because I got it every year when I was a kid. It's rough on asthmatics too, it's a terrifying thing when you have an elderly person under your care and they get pneumonia.
Yeah. All right. So
if a young man or if a young to middle-aged man gets some kind of sickness that makes it impossible for him to carry on YouTube, then it's probably not pneumonia. It's probably AIDS.
Well, that's how, a lot of people who have full-blown AIDS, like if they don't treat their HIV and it goes full-blown AIDS, most of the time when they die, it's from pneumonia. They catch it and, their body can't fight it off, so it just kills them.
Yeah. And now that the drugs for AIDS are extending lives and everything, they're figuring out that the immune system isn't the only part of the body it attacks. And it starts to actually break your whole body down eventually if you survive that long. And people are starting to survive that long now. It's actually a worse disease than they originally thought it was.
Yep.
But when it comes to this situation, the more I think about this, the angrier I get about this. I mean, it's bad enough, to do this to an elderly person at all. I mean, it's absolutely reprehensible. There's like maybe 3 or 4 types of crime that I would consider to be on this level. You know, child abuse, elder abuse, sexual abuse of kids or vulnerable elderly people, and financial abuse of people under your care. I would put them all in the same degree of predatory, reprehensible, cowardly, predatory behavior, because it's preying on the helpless. Like it's you can't get more cowardly than waiting until somebody is sick or dying, or taking advantage when somebody can't fight back, when somebody doesn't have any power like that. It's just sickening. It's just the person or people that are doing that kind of thing have to be the most disgustingly self-loathing, belly-crawling pieces of shit to actually do something like that. And unfortunately, they're everywhere. This is like what's happening to Stan Lee. I having worked with the elderly before, I worked with the intellectually disabled, and it's been years, but and I've seen this kind of shit happen in my own family. I've had to fight this kind of shit happening in my own family. It's very difficult to detect, and it's very difficult to judge what's happening and who's at fault, because the people who do this, the people who financially abuse the elderly, will, to protect their own financial abuse of the elderly, they will accuse the people who are trying to stop them of doing what they're doing, or trying to set themselves up to do what they're doing. And I've watched that happen as well. So it's hard to tell, it's hard to parse what's going on here and be sure of who's doing what. But based on what's come out in the story, it really looks like there should be an ombudsman for the elderly involved here. And it really looks like this deserves to be investigated. And yeah, this has happened to several celebrities, and I think Joey Jojo has brought up Casey Kasem in a super chat, in a $2 super chat.
I saw that.
And then I know it happened to Home Alone, when he was a kid, not elder abuse, but Macaulay Culkin had to sue his parents over this type of abuse. Not obviously the sexual end of it, but the financial end of it. There's been other kids that have had to go through that with their parents, and there's been other elderly celebrities that have had to deal with this with their children, and it's monstrous. But it is very difficult to sort out what's going on and who is actually the abuser, and it becomes very difficult for the authorities and for family members to protect somebody because of this. And it's more that way today because we don't see families caring for their elderly. We see most of the family just sort of turns their backs and they leave it all to one person, or they leave it all to one household, or they dump the person off in a nursing home, or they expect the person to hire home health care. And when you get people who are not emotionally invested in the welfare of the individual, it is much easier to run into that type of abuse, and it is much easier for that type of abuse to go on undetected.
All right, I got some super chats here. So there was the one that Joey Jojo sent, which was $2. Thank you, Joey Jojo. And he says, similar thing happened to Casey Kasem. Tragic. Egregious Charles gives us $5 and says, abuse of someone incapacitated by old age is even worse to me, anger-wise, than abuse of a baby. And the French Honey Badger gives us $2 and says, Stan Lee was married to her, his wife, for 70 years. Almost. Is that a diamond when it gets to 75, or is that platinum?
Yeah, it's your diamond anniversary.
Diamond is 60 something, I think. Maybe 65.
Nope.
70 is beyond.
75.
75 is diamond?
Yeah. 65
is
like
platinum?
50 is, I don't know. It goes from 50 to 75, if I understand right. You know, it's 50 is gold. Yeah.
Platinum.
60 is platinum, and then 75 is diamond. My great aunt and uncle celebrated their 75th wedding anniversary. Wedding anniversary when I was a kid.
They should set up. We should create a uranium wedding. 100. It's going to happen eventually.
If you get to 100.
Well, yeah.
Well, I mean, humans are living longer all the time, right? So, Okay,
if we
well,
get it to where we can perfect that, using your own stem cells to heal your body and everything, we might be
Yeah.
able to have 200 wedding anniversaries. If we
Yeah.
don't, if we get rid of that no fault divorce thing.
I'll tell you what, Okinawa's going to be the first one to do it, though. Okay, so we're going to move on to the last story. And this is about Belgium, because they're doing so good. They're so progressive. Good boy, Belgium. Man arrested for insulting female police officer's gender. Man arrested. Man in Belgium insults female police officer because of her gender and gets fined. So...
Hold my beer, Belgium.
Yeah, exactly.
We're detaining fucking celebrities because of what we think they think.
All right. In June of 2016, a Belgian man was arrested for highway code violation. During the arrest, he insulted a policewoman because of her gender, saying that he did not think that she was fit to be an officer. He was convicted of the crime back in November, with the media reporting on it recently. The law in which the man was convicted under was passed back in 2014, which criminalizes a person for, quote, expressing contempt, end quote, in considering a person inferior due to somebody's gender or reduces someone to a sexual dimension.
It used to be resisting arrest. Do you remember? That was the equivalent of the "it's coming right for us." Like you fucking intimidate them, and whatever action they do as a result of being intimidated, you go, "Oh, you're resisting arrest." But that was too much effort, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Now whatever fucking insults they hurl at the policeman, because no male policeman has ever been told you're unfit for this job. You're not doing your job properly. Fuck's sake.
Well, that's just it. The law itself and the enforcement of the law itself proves this poor guy right. I mean, female officers uniquely need legal protection to coddle their sensibilities. That in an area where male police officers, it's okay if they face that kind of shit because they're men and they can take it. Women can't, right? That's what I'm getting out of this.
Well, I mean,
women
Hannah,
police officers are inferior to male police officers at handling shit talk.
yeah, but Hannah,
That's essentially what the law says. Am I reading that wrong? Is there something I'm missing there?
Yeah, but Hannah, but women need special attention because
Literally, just maybe 100 or so years ago, 100 and such a few years ago,
Chattel.
Yeah.
were still being chattel. Women were
And
still being
obviously that makes women inferior. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but you can't have it both ways. Either women are not inferior and do not belong in the kitchen, and it's okay for a woman to be a police officer and she can do the job just as well as a man, or women uniquely cannot take shit talk, and it cannot roll off women's backs the way it rolls off men's backs, and therefore women's sensibilities uniquely need coddled, and there must be a law to protect their feels in case some dipshit who is irate about being detained says something stupid in the moment that doesn't actually change anything about her job and won't stop her from exercising authority over him and arresting him or ticketing him or whatever, which shows him because emotional labor. Oh my god! I must deal with things that people said.
You're a fucking cop. You're dealing with the criminal underworld. Are you seriously not expecting, like, when you arrest a guy and you're a woman, that he's not going to say, "I bet you take it up the fucking ass"?
I bet he was. I bet this guy was jaywalking and drunk or something.
Like
Last year.
how many times has a white guy who happens to be a cop tried arresting someone or tried detaining someone, and they've gone, "Oh, you're a white man. You represent the white supremacist patriarchy. You can't do any of this because of your race and your gender." And you know, how is that any different from saying to a woman, "Oh, I bet you take her up the ass"? It's, yeah, you look at their race and their gender, and you come up with a bunch of insults because you're very upset at being arrested.
I find it very hard to believe, though, that, like, I know this is clearly the case. Like, it's such a stupid circumstance, you know, a guy getting arrested because he made a stupid insult. But like there's a lot of overlap between, like, let's say modern day intersectional feminists and organizations like Black Lives Matter. How can you be an intersectional feminist and arrest somebody because he made an inappropriate comment, and also be a cop? Because I thought those organizations tend to be anti-cop. It's making my brain melt.
Compartmentalizing. You know,
did you know that
one
female
of the reasons
cops?
that this bugs me so much is because last year, one of the cops that I used to serve coffee to, a local woman, died in a gunfight in a trailer park here in the Dayton area. Put herself in harm's way. This mom, right, with kids, died facing gunfire, and here we have Belgium with a law that about how you can talk to women, and it's specific to women, and it's actually proving the thing that like that cop, she tough as nails, man. If somebody told her to get her ass back in the kitchen, she would have simply put on the cuffs and told him to get his ass into the back seat. You're like, hello. Fuck you guys. Not you guys, but the idea of passing a law like this is so insulting. And I've seen women in the police force be out there, and maybe they're different from the men, but they're certainly not in need of a law like this.
It's like giving police dogs the ability. Yeah, I'm not calling women dogs. I know I have a lot of analogies that seem to compare women to animals, but it's as though you've got police dogs, and a police dog ran after this guy and sniffed after his pockets. So you arrest him because he was obviously offending that dog with what he had in his pocket. But it was only St. John's wort. It has a very similar tinge to marijuana. And the dog thought that I was carrying marijuana, so it barked at me. Well, that's not the point. The dog felt like you were a criminal. Therefore, you're a victim. Therefore, you're a perpetrator of hate speech. Because this specially genetically different police officer we have has this feeling about you.
Interesting point. Moving on with the rest of this, and then I'll do the super chats, and we can talk a little bit more about the article. So, if a man does not pay the fine, he could face. Okay, so he was convicted of the crime in November, with the media reporting on it recently. The law in which the man was convicted under was passed back in 2014, which criminalizes a person for expressing contempt and considering a person inferior due to their gender, or reduces someone to a sexual dimension. Sounds like that is specifically aimed towards female cops. Just saying. If the man does not pay the fine, he could face prison time of up to 1 month. Quote. A quote from the spokesman for the public prosecutor's office. This is the first time we have used this law to prosecute someone. It is quite common for people arrested by the police to insult and threaten, but to personally blame a policewoman because of her sex is special. It was a good case to test this law, a concrete and very clear case with many witnesses.
So does the same go for male ones? If you arrest a feminist and she yells at a male policeman, you're just a patriarch, you're a toxic male. Does the same thing apply? I bet the fuck that it does not.
No. Only men's words have the magic power of reducing somebody to a sexual. Like, you say the magic words, and all of a sudden now there's an empty uniform, and whatever a sexual dimension looks like falls at your feet on the ground, and just sits there helpless and quivering and unable to do anything after that. Women don't have that power because female superiority or something like that.
Is this what they teach female police officers now? Go out there and make sure that the civilians know that you are vulnerable to them.
Yes. You're not just a cop. You're a female cop, and we have new laws just for you.
You're not there to serve the public. Remember, the public is there to keep you happy.
I'm assuming Belgium doesn't have a lot of gang violence.
Bad girls.
Unlikely, no. It's one. It's one big gated community in Belgium, basically.
Now, that's the feeling I'm getting because I could just see somebody trying to arrest gang members with that attitude. Jeez.
Oh my god. All right, continuing on. Another quote from the Institute for the Equality of Women and Men. For the first time, a charge of sexism in the public space was withheld and resulted in a conviction. The Institute for the Equality of Women and Men hopes that this first conviction will help raise awareness of the law against sexism in the public sphere, but also the victims to lodge a complaint and the witnesses to react. The educational role of this law is essential to achieve change in attitudes and behaviors. Oh, God.
You know, this is one of the things I've often stereotypically avoided America because of is the police. You hear a lot of horror stories about how the police in America take a lot of liberties, particularly in states like Florida or whatnot, where you're not even allowed to file a complaint with. You don't even have forms and shit. But then I look at my own country, and we've literally reached the point where a female police officer can, if she thinks she sees you staring at her tits, she can probably invoke the Nottinghamshire model and say, well, this civilian disrespected me by, I think he stared at my tits. He may have just been looking across the station to try and look for something else, but for at least a split second, he was staring at my tits. And according to the Nottinghamshire model, I feel like a victim. Therefore, this man is a criminal. And yeah, this is nothing that's ever happened with the fat donut-eating, brown-shirted fictional cops in the States. That has ever been anything as fucked up as this. That a police officer could just look at where your eyes are going, or, well, it hasn't slipped to that part of the slope yet. It's just can listen to the slurs.
Arresting somebody for sexism is pretty fucking slippery.
That is pretty. I just the irony of the Institute for the Equality of Men and Women hopes that this first conviction will help hammer home the legal enforcement of one area in which the law has deemed that women must be considered inferior and men must be considered all powerful. How dare you question us?
Even if the female is a police officer and the male is a fucking homeless man.
I know. Oh, seriously. Oh, the poor helpless. Like, and it's not that it's not rude for somebody to say something. It's rude and it's stupid. It's also completely pointless and meaningless because she's going to arrest him anyway. She's going to throw him in the back of the car anyway. She's going to take him to the station anyway. He's going to be fingerprinted anyway. He's going to sit his ass in a cell anyway. And who wins that? You know, certainly not the guy who said the stupid thing. Does she really need that much protection so that the guy can't say a stupid thing? I had people say stupid shit to me when I worked in retail. I had people say stupid shit like that to me all the time. I got blamed for the state requiring that I card people for beer. Like, and it was every insult you could possibly think. I got cussed out every day. Should I have a law protecting me because I'm female and my sensibilities need to be protected? I mean, I have people take their frustrations out on me, and in the most ridiculous and stupid of ways. And I had customers that were great too. I had customers that were my friends. You know, not because they were my friends before they walked into that store, but because they came in every day and they enjoyed conversation with me and I enjoyed conversation with them. And there are people that still see me on the street and stop me and say, hey, you're that chick, you know, that used to work at this place. And I remember you and how are you been and blah, blah, blah. But I had people that would come. I had a guy come in one time and shove me and say, you know, get the fuck out of my way, bitch. And had to diffuse the situation because some of my best customers were big, strong construction workers, and they were in there, and I didn't want the guy to get his ass beat in the parking lot afterwards. And it's just, why is somebody who is in a position of authority and power, because a police officer is, in comparison to the citizen, in a position of authority and power, expected to be less tough than the coffee slinger at the local gas station in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Am I saying that I'm better than you? I guess I'm going a little further than you are. Yeah, I'm fucking better than you.
That is probably the most appropriate usage I have ever heard of that meme.
Well, if there's nothing else to say on this topic, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. We are an hour and a half in. We just did it, guys. We did it, fam. We got it in under an hour and a half, finally. So feel free, please, to leave comments below. Also, hit that like button if you haven't done it already. And feel free to share with people and subscribe if you haven't already. And also, I guess the new thing is hitting the bell icon, because apparently sometimes people don't get notified when we go live or when our videos go up, and subscribing doesn't mean shit. So maybe you should just hit the notifications. That way you are notified when we put up a new video, which we do very often. We almost have a new video going up every day. So it's good to know when those are happening and when our live streams are happening. With that said, I want to thank my co-hosts, panelists, peoples, Max, Mike, and Hannah for coming on with me and discussing these topics. Max?
Can I just say one very quick thing?
Sure.
All right, so while the show is ending, if you want to see more content, we just released a video on the channel while we were doing this show. In case you guys were wondering what our thoughts on the whole Lauren Southern, Brittany Pettibone, Martin Sellner thing, you know, them getting banned from the UK, we just released a video, so make sure you click on our channel name and search for that. It'll be the most recent video. And yeah,
that's why
Brian, Hannah, and I.
That's why we didn't talk about Lauren Southern on this particular show, because we did it already. And I didn't want to be redundant. So,
yeah.
And I'm sure Mike will probably do something on his own about this whole business, because I'm sure he has thoughts. He has thoughts and contemplations.
No, we've told the thoughts to be gone.
All right. With that said, then, I'm going to go ahead and take off. Thank you guys so much for coming on. I really love seeing these familiar screen names, anonymous identities. I don't know, folks in the chat. Love you guys, and thanks so much for coming on the stream. We'll see you on the next